Ready to go. All right, so let's make a formal introduction for our listeners. Good afternoon, Andy. My name is Claudio, and I'm calling you from Washington, D.C., from the studios in Fairfax City. We're very humble and grateful that Andy Jackson accepted our invitation to our show. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem, Andy. I mean, you're a very famous guy. You know, you're a British recording engineer, best known for his work with the British progressive rock band Pink Floyd.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a famous guy. I don't think I'm a famous guy. I think they're famous, and I went along for the ride, really.
You're a very humble guy. So.
I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have gone along for the ride. It was great. It's been great, you know. So
yeah.
I always think I was very lucky because doing this for a living, and then I end up working extensively with a band where I really like the music, and you know that's not necessarily a given. A lot of people in my business end up doing music they don't like, so I consider myself very lucky, really.
Absolutely, when there's a match between the music that you like, or and then somebody is paying you good money to do it, it's unbelievable, man.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go back to the beginning of your life. Were you born like in a musical family? And how old were you when you perhaps taking piano lesson or guitar lesson?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, my dad was a decent amateur musician, but that's all. I mean, he played in jazz bands when he was young, but not for a living, just for fun. And he was a journalist, in fact. But yeah, so there was music around, but it was more that thing of starting to discover music, you know, when you're a teenager and things like that, and really, you know, getting a passion for it. And when it was sort of getting to the point where I was going to finish school and what am I going to do, and I was considering going to university, and I didn't like the idea, and it was a friend at school said, "Why not get a job in a studio?" And I thought that sounds like a great idea. So eventually, with a lot of writing letters later, I did manage to get a job in a studio, and I thought, yes, this is the life for me. I love this. So yeah,
good for you, man. Good for you. What kind of music were you listening when you were in equivalent of high school here? You were 17, 18. What kind of music?
Yeah, well, that was the mid-70s. So it was an awful lot of kind of British prog, you know. So King Crimson and Genesis and Van der Graaf Generator, Soft Machine, Floyd, obviously, Hendrix, Zappa, you know.
Wow.
That's you know. So I mean, some of those you could argue whether they're prog or not, but that sort of thing, you know, sort of, if you like, serious music rather than pop music. So
yeah, absolutely, those were the best band. It's unbelievable that, in my opinion, right, in my humble opinion, the top three bands, according to me, came from the UK. The Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, and Genesis with Peter Gabriel. For me, there's no doubt that there's a lot of great bands, of course, out there.
But it's funny. It's funny how much came out of Britain, really. You know, I mean, I suppose we've got the advantage that we speak the same language as America, so that gives us, you know, a big audience potentially. It's much more, you know, obviously Spanish has become really big in terms of its audience, but I think you'd be hard pushed if you were making music in German or something like that. It's just not a very big audience. So we fortunate language.
Yeah, many bands in your country, and you know, were born there, but they thought, well, the money's in the United States, so we need to start, you know, moving across the ocean to start touring there because we can get, you know, more money, more gigs, and more exposure, and so forth. So many, even Genesis, in what they came here in 1972 for 2 weeks. Nobody knew them, who they were, but, you know, it's unbelievable. All right, so I am very happy and lucky that Esoteric Records put me in touch with you, and I have the chance to listen to 12 Half Steps. That the release was coming up next month. So 12 is, although it's purely the instrumental album, it's a collection in modal scale. Feel free to elaborate how that came together, the meaning of the title, you know, the process, your creative process. Feel free to elaborate on that.
Yeah, well, I've done a couple of albums a few years ago, and that sort of, I felt that had scratched the itch that I wanted to do it, and I got busy working with some Floyd stuff again, so it all went away. But with a big period of nothing much going on with Floyd, so I wasn't working, I suppose my desire to make some music again came back. And in this particular case, there's always something I need something to say to catch my attention. It's like, okay, that's an interesting thing, I want to do that. And for people, for the musicologists, Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach, all that time ago, to demonstrate this new tuning technique, the way that we tune instruments now, and that was new back then. It was a different way of doing things. And he wrote a series of pieces, 24 pieces, which was 2 pieces in every one of the 12 keys to demonstrate this new instrument. It was a technical exercise, really. And I don't know why, I was just thinking about that, out walking one day, and it made me think of a similar thing, which the musicians will know about this, that if you think about the white notes on a piano, you can play a musical scale on that. But depending where you start, you get all sorts of different scales. And some of them are very normal sounding and some of them are quite odd. And you've got the same using the black notes on a piano. You get there's 5 notes there, so you can start on each of the 5 notes. So you get different patterns for each of the 12 notes as a starting place if you follow that rule. And it was just an idea that it would be really interesting to do pieces where you do one piece in each of those with each of those 12 starting notes. And it was just, so I just, sat down and started fiddling about. I thought, yeah, I really like this idea. So I just did, and I started. And in fact, I did them completely in order. So I started at the beginning. I started with C, which is the most obvious note, and then just moved my way up one note at a time and did each piece in turn. And each piece was somewhat suggested by what does that sound like when I play those notes, or also just a completely arbitrary thing of something caught my attention. It's like, listening to somebody else's record or thinking, oh, I like that vibe. What would happen if I tried to do something in that vibe or with that rhythm or something like that? So in each case, there were just a bunch of different starting points, but with this overall thing that this was the pattern of notes I was allowed to use in this piece. It was a kind of like working with a restriction. And it just made it an interesting project. And having done a couple of albums before where I sang and found that kind of difficult, and I didn't, I wasn't happy with my voice and things like that. And then to do an instrumental album was an obvious thing to do. And I just started, and it was, to be honest, it was mainly just because I wasn't really doing anything. I wasn't working. It was just something interesting to do to fill the days. And as I really got into it, and it was clear I was going to finish it and make an album, I got back in touch with Esoteric, who'd released my previous albums, and said, do you want to do this? And they said, yeah, sure, great. And here we are, and got an album coming out. So yeah, it was something to do when I was bored, really.
Yeah, it's an amazing album. I listened to the album twice last night when I was putting questions together for this interview, and each piece is done on his own. At the beginning, I thought, well, this is not very cohesive, but I listened to the album again, and it makes a lot of sense. It's like having a book with different chapters, I suppose.
I think that's
it. You read chapter 1, then you read chapter 3 or 4, whatever, in which order you prefer. And then at the end of the story, each chapter makes sense, if you understand.
Yeah, I think that's very right. I think you're right to say it's not very cohesive, but I found really interesting, because I think when I've done things before, it's always been very much thinking about my core taste, which has got that background in prog and all of that, and the previous albums are very much like that there's a sort of narrowing of musical identity into one thing. And this was really interesting to say, well, don't do that. It's just like, oh, this is interesting, and this is interesting, and this is interesting. And, you know, the truth is that we all have a degree of broad tastes about all sorts of things. So it was just what, if it captured my attention at the time when I did it. And because each one I started it and finished it before I moved on to the next one. It was just like I just spent whatever it was, a week or two, looking at one thing, and that was really interesting. And then I did something completely different, and that was interesting. So in some ways, the whole album was done for my benefit. It was to amuse me. It was to amuse me in the process of doing it, really. But, you know, I think that's fine. I mean, you've got to make records for yourself. If you try and make records for other people, you're just trying to guess what other people like, and it just ends up being nothing, really. So, I mean, certainly, you know, like working with Floyd, I mean, David always say that. It's just like he does what he likes. And
that's right. Yeah.
Hopefully somebody else likes it as well, you know, but
absolutely. Plus the other thing is that you don't have the pressure of a record label. Hey, you need to finish that by April 15. It is April 15. It is April 30 now. The album hasn't finished. So in your case, no, you did it because you like it, and you took your time during the pandemic when you started or whatever, and you did it for, you know, as a gift from humanity and a gift from your family or whatever, your friends. And it's a very good album. I'm very happy, you know. So
I just did it for myself. It's something to do, you know. And I mean, I suppose it was about a period of a year, but I did a chunk, and then summer came and I put it away, and because I just, you know, did a little bit of work with David and things, and then summer came and I went and did other things and sailed a boat, and then when the weather got bad, I thought, oh, I should finish the album, really, and got back to it. It's raining. I'll go and do some guitar.
Yeah, no. It's a masterpiece, and you know, hopefully, you know, you will get good promotion and a lot of help from the, you know, Cherry Red Records, and to promote your work, and you know, we'll sell a lot of records, and it's beautiful that people do things because they like it. It's a big difference. It's a big difference, you know. So
no, absolutely. I mean, you know, sure, there's something about, if you're going to create something, whether it's to make some music or write a book or any, you know, make a film or something, you kind of need that thing that you put it out to the public and other people can see it, to validate it, to say it's you know, that's the project in its completion. But really, I don't. Of course, it's nice to sell some, because, you know, that's means that other people like it, and also, you know, make a bit of pocket change and things like that. But really, for me, it's about doing it. It's the process of doing it. That's why I do it. It's because I like doing it. And if I'm involved in a piece of music, then nothing else fascinates me quite as much. And, you know, I'll get up in the morning and have to restrain myself from going and turning the studio on and having a listen before I've got dressed, you know, and end up sort of forcing myself to go to bed because it's like, it's so late. But it's just like, oh, just one more thing, just one more little bit of working on the music, because the process fascinates me. It always has. I mean, you know, I suppose that's why I took to being a recording engineer, because I really like the process, and that's what the really interesting thing is. I kind of had the first Pink Floyd album I did on, you know, as primary engineer, which is Momentary, Lapse of Reason. You know, and they take a long time, those albums. The Pink Floyd albums always take a year and a week. That's what they always take, a year and a week, for some reason. And at the end of it, I kind of emotionally needed it to be something that it couldn't be. I needed it to be, you know, like discovering aliens or something, you know, curing cancer or something, you know, something that was absolutely earth-shattering, which it can't be. All it can be is a good album. and that's the best it can be. And it was emotionally quite difficult for me at first to cope with the fact that that's all it was a record. You know, and you can say, well, people get a lot of pleasure from records, and they do, but it's only a record, you know, and there's a limit to how important that is. So I learned then that while the end, what you get to matters, it's what I really value is the process of getting there, because it can't be enough to justify the amount of attention you pay it and spending a year on something. It's just not big enough. And I think everybody says the same about creative processes. I mean, it's like people that write books. It's like, you know, they're always in the end disappointed with what they've got because they, you know, it took so much effort and took so long, and it can only be so good. And it's always said, particularly about writing books, that no book is ever finished. It's just abandoned. You know, you just can't do anymore. So they say, okay, well, it's finished. And I think that's, you know, that's true of any creative process. You can get hypnotized by doing it, but in the end, there's a limit to how fantastic it can be. So you just have to find an emotional place that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like I suppose, like an emotionally let down when you are done with something, being a book or a paint. You know, if you're a painter, or you know, a record or whatever. You work so hard to put something together. You did the best you could. You argue with people and so on and so forth, back and forth. It takes a long time, and then, okay, guys, this is it. You know, this is the last touch. You know, yeah. the console is turned off, and then go to the it's going to be printed. So it's
Well, I've learned that I don't look back. You know, when it's finished, and then I move. You know, and then I do something else. Because it just seems to be, for me, a better way of dealing with it.
Yeah. In your respect to your album, you did it. Nowadays, you know, a lot of things could be done with a good computer at home, or you did it like at home in a home environment, or you end up going to the studio to remaster after that you did at home.
No, the same as everyone else. It's bedroom studio. Just me and me in my spare bedroom with a computer. Really, same as anybody else makes much these days.
Yeah.
The only thing I went into the studio for was on the album. There's a Dolby Atmos mix, as well as the stereo, and I don't have the facility to do that, so I borrowed David's studio to do the Atmos mix. You know, just went in there for a week to do that. But otherwise, no, it's all just done in my bedroom, same as everybody else.
Is it difficult to when you need to release a Blu-ray to do the surround sounds and Dolby Atmos? It is the process. Feel free to elaborate in the process, because it's very, very interesting. See, what bothers me is for people, you know, download music from the web, right? Buy an MP3, they put in the car, a USB or whatever. It's okay, but it's a lot more than that. I mean, yeah, I get it that not everybody has, I don't know, $2,000, $3,000 to buy a nice stereo at home and you know, Dolby or surround sound, but it makes a big difference. The people that enjoy music, you know, it's a big difference to appreciate something, you know, with a good stereo and a good sound. It makes a world so different, right? And the process for you know, is complicated. So feel free to elaborate it. You know,
yeah, I mean, Atmos is just a step up from the previous surround thing, but it's, you know, essentially, if you know, once you've done surround, it's similar. I mean, you know, there's certain technicalities you've got to deal with. So obviously, I've been doing surround for a long time. Of, you know, every release that we've done since surround was available, we've done it in surround. Floyd, you know, David, whatever. And yeah, I really like it. I mean, I love it. I mean, whenever I do a surround mix, I then listen to the stereo, and it's slightly disappointing. And it's just like, oh, I love this surround. You know, it also, I think, a record also has to work that it's, you know, you're playing it on, you know, an Amazon speaker in the background in the kitchen while you're doing the cooking. It has to work like that as well, you know, that,
Yeah.
you know, ultimately it's about the music, but then the other stuff is all just, you know, the fact that it sounds really good, or, you know, you've got big cinematic pictures or something like that. It's a fantastic bonus for those that get it. It's just an extra level that you can get into, and it's got to sort of exist on all those levels. So I've been just doing this for a living, and I think a lot of people that do this for a living say the same thing. It kind of spoils your ability to just enjoy music like a normal person, because you can't help, your ear is just always just, you can't just have it wash over you. You're always listening to it. It draws your attention, and you're listening to it, and you're listening to it as if you're working on it, and it's very difficult to turn that off. So it's been quite nice for me recently, because the work has kind of really just stepped away, because, you know, there's nothing going on in Floyd world. I mean, there's been the re-release of Dark Side, but, you know, all I had to do was master the live thing. I mean, it was like, I've done very little on that, so I haven't really done anything with them apart from a few odd days here and there, for God knows, a couple of years now. So it's been a really nice depressurizing away from that, and I found that I started putting music on in the kitchen while I was doing the cooking. I sort of did, you know, it got back to just being able to be someone that listened to music because I liked it, and, you know, just, I don't know, whatever, you know, it's like listening to Ziggy Stardust again or something like that, you know, just stuff I, you know, or stuff I hadn't heard before sometimes, and it's been really nice to get back to just liking music like a normal human being. So I think that's part of, you know, what got me back into doing it again, was being able to just depressurize from not working for a while, you know, and because there's just so much, there's only a limit to how much you can really pay attention all the time to music or anything. There's a guy that I've worked with, and he does a lot of orchestral recording, and he mainly works doing music for films. And he said it became the same for him with movies. He can't watch a movie anymore because he's aware of how it works as a, you know, and then he can't, you know, take no notice of the man behind the curtain. It's like, I can't ignore it, you know, kind of thing. So he just looks at a movie, and he's just, you know, everything's about scenes and cues and things like that, and it's just like spoiled. He can't watch a movie anymore. He's like, he can't listen to a record, and he can't watch a movie. So, you know, but you just need to stop doing it for a while, and then it comes back, and then you remember why you liked it in the first place, kind of thing. You know, you can just
it's amazing. I suppose that, you know, if you go and see a movie versus you are a director or you're an actor, it's psychological, my body, because you know, you understand how the movie was put together versus me going to see a movie. It's a great movie. How they did it, have no idea how it came together, but the people that understand how it came together, it's a disappointment, a letdown, because they're even very critical of this stuff. Man, you turn on TV, right? And your friend that does, you know, music for films, say, man, that's terrible. You know, they should have done this and this.
Yeah.
It's like you cannot turn that off, you know, in your head, because you.
yeah. That's why. Yeah, I mean, a huge amount of why this came about is because I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't working anymore. So it allowed, you know, it just allowed the pressure to go down. And it's just like, oh, okay. And relax. And it's like, oh, okay, music. What's this music stuff? I remember that. Yeah, I like that.
Got it. So some years ago in 2016, you did another great album called 73 Days at Sea.
Yeah.
And, you know, feel free to elaborate the same question, how it came together, why you put that together, the meaning of the 73 Days at Sea. It's important as well.
Well, I kind of said a little bit about this in the album notes, that I'd come up with, I'd done one a couple of years before that, Signal to Noise, which was the first one I'd kind of really done as a solo artist. And 73 Days at Sea, it sort of came about from listening to some other stuff and thinking it'd be quite interesting to make an album where it's kind of in three sections, and there's a group of songs that belong together, and then another group of songs, and then another group of songs, three sections, like a three movement thing. And I found that I was writing lots of things around to do with the sea. And so I thought that would be one of the movements, but then I just found I just kept writing about the sea, and so all of it became about that. So I abandoned the three movements thing, and the whole thing became about that. And the title was a newspaper headline. It was about, I think, a new world record had been set for people living, under the sea, in a pod or something like that. It was just a newspaper headline I saw, 73 Days at Sea, and I just thought, you just pick that up like just like a magpie, just sort of collecting things. And I just thought, I just really like that as a title. And so it doesn't have any more meaning than that. It's just an allusion to the idea of, focusing on the sea for a long time. And as it happens, at the time I was working, what was I doing? I don't know, can't remember. Some project with David. And at the time he was living in Brighton, right by the seafront. So I was going backwards and forwards to the sea most days, and I took my little mobile recorder and went and walked around the beach and recorded the sound of the sea, which is on the album. So
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, the sound of the sea on that album is outside David Gilmour's house, which is there's an amusing thing for information collectors. That's David's Sea in Brighton. So yeah, it just becomes one of those things that there isn't necessarily any great meaning in it. It just becomes something where it catches your attention for a while, and so you do that. And of course, I mean, the sea. Human beings have had a relationship with the sea for an incredibly long time, and it's full of symbolism, and there's so many.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's so many phrases and things like that are something to do with the sea, being adrift or whatever, or all washed up, or I can't even, loads of them. So it was just a fruitful starting point, really, to write some songs, and that was it, really. So.
It's I listened to the album this week again. I have the CDs, and I don't know if it's available on vinyl or not, but it's a very good album. I really like your stuff, and it's
there was a lot
very
of things
well put together and thoughtful, and
yeah, a lot of things I really like about that. I've just reached a point where I don't want to be singing again, because I found it really difficult, and I think it's one of those things, to sing well you need to have done it for a long time, and I haven't. So it was a deliberate thing to do, because I wanted to be able to do the album myself and have full control about it, and just be me, really. Both of those albums, and so it was a deliberate choice to sing. You end up just maybe not liking it. I remember talking to Phil Manzanera about that, and he said that he'd been through the same process, and there's one album of his that he sings on, and he didn't go back to it because you don't really like the results, and so rather have other people do it. To go off at a tangent, I've just started. Well, I'm a little way into the next album, because something immediately, just by chance, I just finished this one, 12 half steps, and something caught my attention, which was just something I found on the internet, which was that there's getting some pretty good synthetic singing things now. So basically it's a computer program, and you type in the notes and you type in the words, and it sings And there's a Japanese company that are doing some really good stuff. And I listened to the demos and I thought, wow, that's really pretty good. And I thought 90% of the time it's completely convincing as a person. Occasionally you can tell it's a machine. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. And right at that time was at the time when suddenly the whole world was talking about ChatGPT, and what was going on with AI and all of that. And then there's all that stuff about, I spent 2 hours like digging into ChatGPT and it got really weird and all of that, all of that was starting to happen. And I thought, okay, well, how about some music sung by an AI about being an AI? So it's deliberately, it's not pretend, it's not the idea of, is this convincing as a human being? It's like, this is the AI singing, and it's going to talk about being an AI and talk, but then at times you won't realize that it's talking about being an AI. It will be like, this sounds like a normal love song, but it's actually really weird because it's a machine doing it, And I'm doing that, and it's great, and it's lovely, and I'm writing songs again with singing in it, but it's not a human being singing; it's a machine, and it's fantastic.
Wow.
It's some great voices, really. Anybody that I've played it to, that doesn't know it's an AI, it never occurs to them that it's not a human being, because it wouldn't,
really?
And also if you listen to, I don't know, a lot of pop music, Taylor Swift or whatever, that doesn't sound like a human being either. It's so processed that,
That's
that
right.
is, so yeah, anyway, I digress.
Yeah, it's okay. When is that is for a project for next year or
well, I don't know when I finish it. So I'm working on song number 4 at the moment. So, I don't know.
That's one third.
Yeah. So yeah. So once I've got, I don't know, once I've got about 10 songs, then I'll make, then it'll be that. I don't know, because it's not mapped out in the same way as the previous one. It's just I'm doing a bunch of stuff, and at first it was really easy to get lyrics and things because I could just like find things where people have written down about some of the stuff it says, ChatGPT or whatever, some of the weird stuff it comes out. Just take that and you kind of rearrange it into lyrics and things like that.
Sure.
It's been an interesting process because you start to, without going into this too much, I mean, the way that, there's been a lot of conversation about the way that these AI or large language models work. And about how it's kind of like a human being, but then it's not, it's not. Are they thinking? Or it's like, no, they're not thinking. It just looks like thinking and all of that.
That's right.
But then I started to notice that my own sort of like weird glitchiness about the way my brain works, or I suppose the same with anyone, that, you notice all these things where you get things that, like if you see something out of the corner of your eye and you think it's something, but it's something different, and that sort of thing. And it's the same thing with the mental process. So I started to notice my own glitching. So that became something that I could incorporate into that, was the way that we're AIs as well, or, it's just, it's just been an interesting, and of course that's a story that develops by the day, the whole thing of AI, and suddenly everyone's looking at this, so
the whole world's going to, it is changing right now. It had been changing for a while. Good or bad, depending on the point of view, right? So you mentioned Phil Manzanera. He's a very nice guy. I go to London like the UK in general, like 3 times a year. So I was in London last month in March, and I visit Phil Manzanera's studio. He's a very nice person. He's a very good guy.
Nice. He's a lovely man. Really is.
Yeah, he's a very good guy. Yeah.
Yeah, we obviously spent quite a bit of time together on a couple of projects, couple of Floyd projects. I mean, doing Endless River, and then
that's right.
Rattle That Lock. And Phil was very involved in both of those. So yeah, we spent a lot of time together, and and I've done little bits and pieces mastering for him and things. Yeah, he's He's a great guy, and he's got some really interesting things that he brings to it.
Yeah.
You know, if nothing else, he spent a lot of time around Brian Eno, so a lot of that sort of rubbed off, and you know, some of the way that Roxy Music was an interesting band because they weren't primarily musicians; they were all art students.
That's right.
And they approached it in a completely different way. And I suppose Brian Eno is the most obvious and notable one of that, the way that he brings that whole idea of if you change the way you work, then you make something different, and that's interesting. So, you know, even to the extent of like, let's make a record where we all stand up rather than sit down, and things like, you know, even simple things like that. And it just changes, you know, changes the way you think about things. And he produced those oblique strategy cards, which is a physical set of cards, and it's now an app as well, which just throws it's just little phrases, and you just, you know, if you don't know what to do, you draw a card and it'll say something, and it's just like, well, what does that mean, and how do I follow that? So I don't know, whatever. Decorate. That's one that I've been thrown at. So I use that a lot in the process of doing things. In fact, there's a picture of the cards in the album artwork. Phil has some really interesting stuff that he'll bring to it, and he's very organized as well. He was really useful for David. You know, David has a whole bunch of ideas and little, you know, scraps and pieces and things like that. And Phil was very good about, you know, cataloging it all and saying, well, this one would go with that one. Why don't we? What happens if you glue those two bits and bring those two bits together and things like that? So, yeah, he was a very useful foil for David to work off and help David reorganize it.
Yeah. Phil Manzanera was telling me that David Gilmour kind of, it's difficult for him to commit to something. It will take a long time, right? So I was asking Phil, you know, David Gilmour, are you guys planning on touring together again, or put a new album together, helping out David? He says it's going to take a while because David Gilmour take a long time to do anything, right? So somebody to push him. So I say, like a track a month? No, even that.
Oh no,
you know,
absolutely, yeah.
You know, they have done well financially. All the Pink Floyd guys have done well financially in their life. They don't have to work. They don't have to wake up every morning or whatever.
No.
So they will only do it when they want to do it, or when they allocate time for their busy life to do it. So it's like music, it's a little bit on the background, as opposed to you are an upcoming musician. You need to work on the stuff because you make a living doing that, right? So you need to tour because you make money touring. People don't buy records or CDs anymore like they used to. So as an upcoming musician, you are forced to write. You are forced to put a record every 2 years so you can tour with the new album and then make some money, right? But the Pink Floyd guy or the Led Zeppelin guy or whatever, the Genesis guy, they're well off, so they don't have to do it, right?
No, but you do it because you want to. You do it because you know, that's what you do. I mean, it's interesting. I always think a good example, you mentioned Zeppelin there. It's really interesting the way that Robert Plant has been over the last decade or two, you know, where he's found things that interest him, you know, working with other people, you know, when he did the two projects of working with female singers and things like that. And he just keeps making new music. And it's music that you haven't heard before, and music that he hasn't done before, and it's nothing like Led Zeppelin, and he's singing.
That's right.
And I think Robert's really admirable, like that. Yeah, David's very good at expanding. He's very good at, you know, like, here's more ideas, and he'll find more and more things to bring to a song. But what he doesn't have so much strength is the idea of then restricting, of subtracting, which is why it was such a productive period of him and Roger working well together, because David's really good at expanding and Roger's really good at restricting. So Roger would be really, really good at saying, get rid of that, that's the point, do that. Let's do, you know, like really narrowing the focus of something, whereas David would be very good at expanding the focus of something. So it was a great combination, but of course that always leads to conflict as well, because it's the same with so many great writing partnerships. It's the conflict between them that makes the creative thing, but it becomes unbearable after a while. So, you know, the other classic one, of course, was Lennon and McCartney, where they were so good working together because they were each other's biggest critics. You
That's
know,
right.
what do you think of this? That's rubbish. Okay, do better, you know? And it becomes untenable after a while. So, yeah, David's very good at expansion, but you know, and it's not that he doesn't do things, because he does. I mean, he's working on a project now, but he's been working on that project for a long time because he keeps expanding. So eventually he'll have to say it's finished, and then probably I've not been involved because he can do it at home, and he has been. I'm only involved if he wants to do drum tracks or something, because he doesn't have the skill set to record that. But then somebody's got to come in and help sort it out. That may be me.
Right.
I don't know. So yeah.
In the 73 states at sea, you end up you had guest appearances from David Jackson as well as Anne-Marie Helder, right? Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, well, Anne-Marie came about. I was very aware I wanted a girl singer on one of the songs. Yep. And I thought about, I'd been in that band Eden House for a while, which had a succession of girl singers, and I thought about any of those, but none of them really seemed to be what I was looking for. And I didn't know Anne-Marie's work, but I just thought, well, where I've got a contact through is through the record company, through Esoteric. So I just looked at all the bands that were on Esoteric that had girl singers, and came across her. I thought, okay, well, I like her voice. And so I just made the approach through the record company. I just said, hey, hello, heard your stuff, like it. Do you want to sing a song? She said, yeah, okay. And David Jackson was again through the record company, because there's connections there, because Van de Graaff Generator are now on Esoteric. And he was a hero. You know, that was one of the, like Van de Graaff was one of the bands that I listened to. You know, we talking about what did I listen to when I was 16 or 17? Well, Van de Graaff Generator, you know. And I love that stuff. And I loved David's playing. So it's the same thing. I just, through the record company, I said, hello, this is me. That's you. I love your stuff. Do you want to play on this record? And he said, yeah, sure. And in both cases, I mean, because of modern technology, I've never met either of them. You know, I sent them the track, and they did it and sent it back, and it's like, yeah, great, thank you. So, you know,
wow,
it gave me a few options, and I picked through it and got the thing on. So I've never met David or Anne-Marie. So
wow, it's amazing now with the level of technology that we have, like this instance, right? I never met you. We talk over the internet, and people back in the day when you were working with all the Pink Floyd guys. You go in the studio and you are 10 hours a day, and you accomplish a track or half a track, and then you go back 2 days later and you put another piece, and it was very, very expensive, because there's hours studio time, as you know, they're very expensive. Nowadays, you have a $2,000 computer or whatever, and then you say track back and forth. Hey, can you change that? This and that, and then you can put it together within a couple of days or 3 days. It's amazing.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the great democratization of technology. You know that.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when I started Utopia Studios in London, I mean, it was so expensive to make a record. It was just astronomical, but there was no choice. That was all you could do. It was the only way you could make a record. Whereas now, as you say, I mean, what it would cost to do one day in that studio, now you can go out and, buy yourself an Apple Mac and some software and make a record at home. You know,
That's
and
right.
a little interface and a pair of headphones, and there you go. And essentially, that's essentially what I've got. I mean, I've got, you know, a slightly better version of that, but it's, you know, I've got an Apple Mac and some bits of digital gear, and that's it really, and a couple of mics. And it's not anything that anybody else couldn't have. And the flip side of it is that there's a lot of expertise lost. So just things like, I mean, you know, in terms of what I do, engineering, that you would have made records back then, and they would have been made by really good people that were engineers for a living, and now they're made by, you know, the guitarist who's bought a computer, and they don't, you know, they don't really know how to do it well. And certainly, when I was still mastering stuff, you get through stuff that was essentially made like that, and it's just like, oh Jesus, this sounds, you know, this just sounds so bad, and you just try and sort it out a bit, but you know, it's because it's made by people that don't have a level of expertise, and that's sort of gone. And when I started, you know, there was a whole family tree of engineers. So, you know, you start off with, well, my family tree, there was a guy called John Hudson who started off at the BBC and then ended up running Mayfair Studios, and he did loads of great stuff, Tina Turner and all sorts of things. And he trained James Guthrie, and then James Guthrie trained me, and then I trained, you know, and so on and so on. You get this succession of this skill set passed down the line.
Yep.
And that's gone now. There's almost no professional recording studios left, apart from, you know, a handful that do orchestral stuff and things like that. And people are trying to rediscover how to do it properly, and it's just like, well, you know, do you understand how to use a microphone properly? And it's like, no, they don't, you know. So there's a downside to it, but you know, the upside is this massive democratization, which is that anybody can make a record. They just necessarily won't make a great record, but they can make a record. And I think, you know, overall, that's a net positive, undeniably. And I guess logically, in time technology, if you think about AI, it will be like, you can, you know, you'll be able to just tell the computer, I want this to sound like a Motown record, and it will do it for, you know, and it will be able to do it for you, and the skill set will be there in the AI. You know, nobody knows how to make barrels or make wheels out of wood anymore, you know, because they're skills we don't need. And you can say, oh, the old barrel making skills have disappeared. It's like, well, we don't need it. That's why, you know, and actually barrels now are better than barrels used to be when they were made by hand, you know, and now we don't need that stuff anymore. So, of course, that's back to the conversation about AI, and people are saying, well, we don't need journalism anymore, and we don't need this anymore, and we don't need that. And maybe some of those things are true, that, you know, it will just be able to do it better than we ever could. I don't know. We'll see.
So what's happened in your profession with all these professionals that used to work at Utopia, Trident Studios?
Yeah.
You know, talking to Nick Davis, I met him in London as well last month, and the farm disappeared. Genesis, you know, the console was getting old, dusty, and nobody would, you know, let's get rid of stuff, sell everything, you know. And so what's happened with those, to your profession? What's happened with all those recording engineers that used to work in the studios, and now they don't need anymore? What they do for a living?
Well, we're all retiring. You know,
no, you cannot retire.
I mean, my generation, I mean, you know, well, I'm 65, so you know, so my generation is 65 and beyond, and you know, some of them keep going, and there's these younger guys, and new guys come through, but new people come through, but I don't know, I don't pay any attention to, be honest. I've no idea. What's
so. Well, Abbey Road is always busy, you know.
Oh yeah.
You know, I'm not a musician, but everybody want to say that age, you know. Hey, my album was recorded and mixed at Abbey Road Studios, as if was the last thing. So or Peter Gabriel, the real world studio, he, a studio, no computer, no, they like to do the real thing. I don't know what benefit, pros and cons, I suppose, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, Abbey Road obviously has a unique position that keeps it going about doing orchestral stuff and movies and things like that, and that's what keeps it alive. And you say about Real World or something like that, well, that's that belongs to Peter, and I don't suppose it's economically viable without Peter propping it up. I don't know, but I wouldn't have thought so.
Yeah.
I remember hearing just on a forum a great story about somebody, a mastering engineer, and he was doing an album, and it had been done by different engineers, different tracks, and he said there was one track on it that just sounded so much better than anybody else, and it was engineered by Al Schmidt, who was absolutely legendary. He's recently died, actually, Al, but he was Al Schmidt won the Grammy every year, it seems, the Grammy for Best Engineered Album. He was just brilliant. And this mastering engineer was saying that the track that Al did sounded so much better than anybody else's. And so he phoned Al up and said, "Oh, I heard this track you did, and it sounds fantastic." And Al said, "Oh, do you think it's okay? I had to mix it in the computer. I couldn't do it on an analog console. Is it okay?" So it's just, okay, yeah, all right. Well, it's just like, I tell you what makes the difference, Al, is you, kind of thing. And I stuck out with analog for a long time, and then there was a certain point where the technology got where you got classic pieces of analog gear, and then you got the digital representations of them. And I very carefully set up a mix using analog gear, and then I matched it exactly using, the pictures of it, the drawings of it on a computer, and made two versions of it, one done each way. And then I sat with Damon down at David's studio, and we listened to them. And the way we do it as well is one of us operates is like switch, switch, switch between the two things. And so you don't know which one you're listening to. It's just like, here's one, here's the other. First one, second one, first one, second one, switching between them. And then we change positions, and the other one does the switching, and the other one listens to it. So you don't know which one's which. And it's just like, I like the first one best or the second one best. And we both absolutely picked the one that was done not analog, the one that was done with the computer. And it's like, okay, right, that's the end of that then. And David's studio has got so much fantastic analog gear, none of which ever gets turned on anymore. We just don't use it, because this stuff it's the same but better. It's the same, but it doesn't have the noise, and it doesn't, it's just. So it's another fantastic democratization of technology. If you spend another, after buying your Apple Mac, you spend another couple of thousand on some decent plug-in stuff, and there you go. You can make record. You can certainly process records, make mixes of things as well as anybody could if you've got the skill set. So
yeah.
So doing albums in my bedroom is fine, kind of thing. To be honest, it's the same if I, my mixing the recent stuff of like mixing Floyd things and stuff like that. That's how it starts off. Most of 90% of it is me in my bedroom mixing it, and then I get together with David and say, okay, this is where I've got to. What do you think? What do you want to change? And he'll do what he wants to it, and there we go. But things like, I don't know, all the later years stuff, like the remix of Momentary, Lapse of Reason and Delicate Sound of Thunder.
Yeah,
most of that was done in my bedroom.
Amazing.
I don't have to go anywhere that way. Just get up in the
That's right. Yeah.
Don't leave the house.
Yeah, you are there in your pajamas.
Yeah,
in the morning, drinking tea or coffee or whatever.
Yeah, I get dressed. I have some standards.
Yeah. Some years ago as well, in 2014, you end up releasing, I think, your first album called Signal to Noise. It's a very good album as well. It's a more progressive, if you will, compared to the last, the last two. Yeah. feel free to elaborate how that came together, with the motivation to put that together. How long does it take? And so,
how long did it take? I don't know. Probably, probably the same sort of thing of on and off for over a year. I don't know. It's just the same thing. I'd ended up joining a band. Many years ago, I did a few albums with a British goth band, Fields of the Nephilim, and I'd stayed friendly, particularly with Tony, the bass player. And he brought a project to me that he'd done with another guy and some singers, the Eden House, which was a kind of recording project. And he brought me the album to master. And I did that, and we were chatting, and he was talking about, what they're going to do next. And he said, "Do you want to be in the band?" It's like, okay, all right. Because they needed to expand it to have enough people to be able to perform it live. And they needed another guitarist. And he asked me to do it. It's like, okay, all right. And that turned into, I suppose I was in the band for about 3 years, and we did a few recording projects and played a bunch of gigs and things, right back at the, like driving 4 hours in a van with the gear to go and do a gig and loading, carrying your own equipment and all that kind of stuff, right back to the beginning. Which was great. I really enjoyed it, but it had run its course for me, and I decided to stop. And then I really wanted to carry on making some music, so I just, that's when the decision was made to make my own stuff. And I initially wrote a song or two and tried having someone else sing it. I tried one of the singers from Eden House originally. But I decided that the singer is such a central identity to a project that it needed to be me. So I did a bit of exercises from the internet, singing exercises, and committed to singing it myself, which I found really difficult and an unpleasant process. And yeah, just, did what comes natural to me, wrote some songs and made an album. It was all, same, and again, just, in my bedroom, different bedroom, because I wasn't living in the same place, but yeah. And not much more to say about it than that. And signal to noise is a phrase that comes from audio engineering. In a lot of other engineering, it is just, and I just used it as an analogy from the idea of sorting out what's important from all the rubbish in life. Really, that's what the title alludes to. And a lot of the songs are about that, but they're just about whatever caught my attention, to be honest, really. So, and very often my girlfriend would come to me with like, "Oh, this is interesting," about something she'd read or something like that, and that would kick off an idea, and then, work on some lyrics, and follow. Some things don't work out, some things do. So it was just wanted to. I've always made on and off. I mean, there's actually more albums in the past that never came out that I made, which are still sort of sitting there, not doing anything.
you should give it to the esoteric.
Oh, not now,
guys.
No, it's all no.
They want to put it out. Like a Andy Jackson box set.
Retrospective, yeah. Well, no, I think I've lost everything in it.
You need to look back to the old computer, maybe somewhere on a tape.
Yeah, no, God, yeah, I think they're well gone. No, never look back, always look forward. So, yeah.
All right. If you didn't become a musician or record engineer, what would you be doing right now if you?
I don't know.
Don't know.
I was before I decided to get a job in a recording studio, I was going to go and go to university and study metallurgy. It's like, that's what I was due to do. So I don't know. You're supposed to be working for a chemical company making plastic. I don't know. I have no idea.
You didn't get any no pressure from your family, from your dad, your mom saying you were 18 years old, ready to finish high school, and
No,
you have an inclination for music. Your parents telling, "No, forget about music. Don't be a musician.
no,
You're
no,
not
no.
never going to make any money. Go to the uni." And
No, I don't think my dad was in a position to do that because he'd left school at the earliest possible opportunity with no qualifications at all. I mean, he's a very bright man,
wow,
and sort of had 20 jobs in his first year, and the last one was working at a newspaper. And he thought, I like this, and he was there for the rest of his life. So
that's right. Wow.
he did the same thing, and there were absolutely just live your own life,
Mm.
So
Do what makes you happy,
yeah,
and if you
yeah.
can make a good living out of, why not, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I've always, encouraged. I've got grown-up daughters now, and I've always encouraged them to do the same thing. Just live your own life, for better or worse. We all stumble through life, and sometimes we fall over and raise our knee, and this is like,
Absolutely.
well, that's all part of it. Here you
That's
are.
right.
Yeah, here you are in a different country. And
That's right. Yeah.
and it's all a great adventure, and some of it you get right and some of it you get horribly wrong, and just like that's the way it goes. So, and if what would have happened if you turned left instead of turning right at some point? It's just like, well, you may be in a different place, but you end up, I suppose, gathering together the experiences that you need to become the person that you are. And if you don't find them in one place, you find them in somewhere else. So I don't know, could all get very philosophical about paths through life, but yeah. No, that's what happened. And here I am, for better or worse.
Yeah. All right. All right, Andy. I think we've been talking for an hour, so I think for part 2 we will revisit the Pink Floyd days from the beginning, from the album. I'm quite sure you have a lot of great stories to tell. Some stuff you could tell on a record, some stuff you couldn't tell on record, but it's a great band. It's Pink Floyd, one of the best band in the history of the world, the history of music. So, and you were part of it. Although nowadays so much, I don't know, politics involved between Roy and David. They send texts to one another. I don't know, they are behaving like a babies, if you ask me. I don't know. Well, easy for me to say, but I when you are at 70-something their age and you have done well financially, you tour all over the world. What difference does it make if Roy wanted he want to create his own version of the Dark Side of the Moon, and then they send text and tweet at 3 o'clock in the morning? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think nearly everybody, and that includes me, is just like, it's like, why don't you stop it? I don't know. It's just I can't really say anything, obviously, because I'm still involved, but it's just I don't think any of us find it makes anything better.
Really. No,
Just give me a sec, please.
No problem. Yep. Yeah, I mean, I wish. Then again, easy for me to say. I'm not on the shoe, but make peace with your bandmate, for people that you were together in the same room for many years. I don't know. It's Roy Waters now it's like political spectacle in many ways. Of course I love. He's a very talented person, the great band of the world, Pink Floyd. 50% is politics, and of course I pay expensive ticket to see them. It's a great show. The light, the sound is great and everything, but I don't know. He has changed a lot, I think,
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much I'm going to say about this, and I suppose, just the same as a lot of people, it's just, it would be great if it was different. That's all.
Yeah.
But I mean, anybody that knows Roger and David, I mean, it's the unstoppable force and the immovable object, really, and that's always been the case. Yeah. And anybody that knows them will know which one's which as well.
So, yeah. Hopefully one day I will have the chance to meet them and never met them or interview them. Maybe one day. My time is, I need to do it soon because eventually people will retire and they won't, they will really retire, and I won't be able to get a hold of them. But hopefully I will like to meet them one day and talk, have a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, or something, So
yeah, it's interesting, really, what the approach that Nick's taken, which is just, well, just have some fun with what's left of it all and what he's doing.
That's right.
I mean, I've never heard anything he's done with Saucer Full of Secrets, but I know I speak to Guy occasionally. I know, and they're having a ball. They're enjoying doing it. It's just fun. Okay, all right. That's another approach to it, really. Which it's funny that it's Nick that's the one that sort of keeps active, really. But he likes doing it. He just likes doing it. That's all. He's doing what he likes.
Absolutely. All right, Andy, it was very nice talking to you. I will send you a link to the interview later on or tomorrow, and then I will send you an email so we can coordinate so we can do part 2, and then we start talking about all the Pink Floyd stuff from the beginning and your involvement and on the record, which is great music. And you have done you're very humble, like every Englishman. They're very humble compared to Americans here across the ocean, and you have done well, man.
Thank you. Yep, sure. Okay. Well, whenever you like. So cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. It was very nice talking to you.
Thank you. Cheers.